So let's see. Did you want to go and have a seat?
No, I'd rather sit down. I've been sitting all day.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I get that.
If you want to sit down, though.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, so, okay, ready? Ready? Okay. Hello, this is James Robinson.
Since entering the industry in 1989, James Robinson has worked for most every major comics publisher on iconic characters such as Superman, Batman, the Fantastic Four, Captain America, the Terminator, and the Justice League of America, as well as cult classics like Grendel and Vampirella. Thanks to his highly regarded breakthrough work on the Golden Age prestige miniseries with Paul Smith, Robinson replaced Roy Thomas as comics' shepherd of Golden Age properties like Hawkman, The Invaders, and the Justice Society of America. He is the co-creator of the Ultraverse hero Alex Swan from Firearm, and the creator-owned Wildstorm heroine Chance Falconer from Leave It to Chance. He's a screenwriter and film director, but is probably best known for his 7-year run crafting the perennial favorite Starman revival series with artist Tony Harris. In a decade defined by flashy artists and manufactured collectibles, Robinson was the rare hot writer bringing craft, intelligence, and integrity to a field thirsty for it, and was at the vanguard of the push toward the script rating over all in the modern comics arena. This interview was recorded at Comicpalooza 2017 in Houston, Texas, and has been edited for time and clarity. After the success of the Golden Age, Howard Chaykin offered to draw the sequel. Did the Silver Age ever make it further than informal discussion?
Yes, it did actually. It made it to an outline that I did, and then I don't remember exactly why. It was basically Howard lollygagged, and then he got distracted, and then I got distracted, and quite honestly, I was always a little bit wondering if I was doing the Silver Age because everyone said I should, or if I was doing the Silver Age because I really wanted to do it the way I wanted to do the Golden Age. And then JLA Year One came out with Mark Waid and Barry Kitson, and I was amazed really by how much of what I was going to do was in that outline. And obviously I'm not talking about plagiarism or anything, just, there are certain things that you end up incorporating in. So there was a lot of that. My idea had more Dan Garrett Blue Beetle, so that was something. But then ultimately, I really felt that the perfect Silver Age, the sequel to the Golden Age, and we have spoken many times, and we both consider it to be that, was Darwin Cook's New Frontier. So ultimately, I think people got the best version of the Silver Age, although it wasn't by me or Howard Chaykin.
Excellent. Can you give us any idea what was in that outline?
No. Okay, this is so vague. I know that a lot of it was, I think, the disappearance of Dan Garrett, who was in the start of it, was being investigated by John Jones as the detective. And in the course of investigating Dan Garrett's death, he actually uncovered an alien threat and slowly had to use the members of the Justice League, but they were all meeting each other without them all being together. So you'd have lots of team-ups and little bits of crossover, kind of almost like a game of telephone where the message gets passed on and passed on. But without them being the Justice League, and I don't know if I was going to make them all come together at the very end the way that Darwin did or not. It's been a long time since I did it. So, but that was the thing. They're the parts that stick in my mind. And there's probably other things as we're talking that might come back, and I'll tell you as we talk.
Did you want to use Dan Garrett because he was kind of lost in the transition from the original version to Steve Ditko, or did you have a particular interest in that character?
Well, honestly, a little bit of both. I mean, he was the first major character that really was killed off in that way back then. I mean, back when deaths were shocking and they never really happened. And even in the Ditko ones with the new one, the mystery was what happened to Dan Garrett. That was always part of the B plot of those early Blue Beetles. So I kind of wanted to play off that and just give him a little bit of a cooler send-off, a more heroic, because it all felt a little bit like, let's just get him off the playing field, the original Charlton comics. So, and originally he was even a Jack Kirby newspaper character for a short period of time. So I wanted to kind of play up that a little bit, and I didn't, but that still actually interests me, the whole lineage of the Blue Beetle and Dan Garrett. So who knows, maybe one day I'll get to do that, but, we'll see.
You brushed up against John Jones a few times in comics, but never really got to bore into that character, and he seems like a really good fit for your writing style with the noir, and you're mixing the sci-fi and everything else in that. Do you have any particular interest in that character, or any interest in ever exploring that character further? Any thoughts on the character?
Honestly, yes, absolutely. He's always been one of my favorite characters because when I was first getting into comics, when I was a little boy, and in Australia, although I'm English and I was born in London, I spent 4 years in Australia when I was a boy, they would have these big black and white reprint anthologies where you would literally get, for the price of one American comic, like 6 or 7 of these Australian black and white ones. So I got to read a lot of those early John Jones stories, but not so much John Jones stories, but his appearances in Justice League, but somewhat of a bland character. But then there's the final time it was like he was leaving forever because back then you didn't have the idea that characters would come back. When he goes off into space in one of the Dick Dillon. Who I can't remember who inked that issue, but
I think Sid Green inked that. I loved his work on Dylan.
Exactly, Sid Green did ink that. Yes, absolutely. When he leaves, I found it so moving that from that point on, I've always kept an eye on him and been interested in that the character and what he was, and the fact that when he started off, he was kind of it would have been a great 1950s. You could have done that as a 1950s TV show almost, with a shadow. In fact, it would have been great with an actor playing a detective, but his shadow that only we can see was this alien figure, which you could do with a projector. So, long story short, I would love to do John Jones. Who knows what I'll be doing in a year or 2 years, but that definitely is a character that appeals to me. And you're right, I think it would suit my strengths.
How did you come to work at Wildstorm?
I don't really honestly remember. It might have just been that I was sort of this young guy doing, firearm and thing. When we were doing Ultraverse, everyone else was pitching their version of X-Men or their version of this or that. I did something that no one else even had an inkling to do. So I think that caught Jim Lee's attention, and as a result, he wanted a writer that was like one of the English writers. Because, back then that was a thing to be an English writer, to take over Wildcats. I think he knew that although the art was fantastic, he was doing the art. The stories it was all a little bit of a muddle, and he wanted something that would perhaps be a little bit more respected. So he brought me on with Travis Cheris, and to change things. But it was amazing that he did. I did Team One. About the birth. I actually did a Wildcats Year One, of which there were 10 pages of Alan Davis penciled artwork somewhere. So he really did hand me the keys to the kingdom. But then I was starting to work at DC. I was doing Leave It to Chance. Other things came up, and it just sort of ended as opposed to me staying on like I perhaps should have. I enjoyed doing it, though.
It sounded like you did a fair amount of research for your Wildcats run. Did you feel like you had a particular affinity with any of the characters, any of the ones you really wanted to explore more? Because you laid a lot of groundwork that you didn't get to pay off.
Yes, I did, actually. I felt an affinity. I kind of want. I like the whole android love, humans love thing. I guess growing up with the whole romance. I mean, my generation, the whole romance of the Vision of Scarlet Witch was something that was just part of comics. So I kind of want to do something like that with Voodoo and Spartan. But then along the way, I also enjoyed the backstory of Zealot and a lot of the history, the idea that all of these words come from these guys in the past having lived this long. It was a fun challenge, actually, putting together all these bits of stories, some of which were very cohesive, and other bits were clearly just made up on the fly and making it all feel like a real thing. And then just because I didn't want to jump in too soon. The first 2 issues are really like a sort of, what was his name? Santini.
Yes, Ben Santini, I think.
Ben Santini. His solo, it was kind of his introduction. I remember one of the things that I didn't like was that Imp blows up that guy's knee. And I remember thinking, well, that's not very heroic. That seems like these guys are cops. They're not bad guys. So that was I'm going to use something with that. So that little panel was enough that that gave me the beginning of it. But then the idea that he was a movie buff and he's comparing himself to Joan Crawford and stuff like that, I thought was funny and suited my kind of writing.
How'd you manage to get 12 issues of art out of Paul Smith? And do you think you're ever going to return to Leave It a Chance?
Well, actually, I've got to correct you. There was 13 issues of Leave It to Chance. And honestly, it is one of the most frustrating and heartbreaking aspects of it all. Paul Smith just vanishes. And, I mean, to my knowledge, he's not upset with me. We haven't had a falling out. But he just went away. And you know, partly, I think, you know, his father died a while ago and left him a property in somewhere remote, Colorado or somewhere where loners go to, you know, whittle wood and look at the sunset. And you cannot get hold of him anymore. Like, literally, he was doing this. He took over the Spirit with from when Darwin Cook was doing the Spirit. He took it over. Him and Mike Klug did every other issue. And I got a call from Joey Cavallari, the editor at the time. He says, "Hey, how do we get hold of Paul Smith?" I was like, "Well, I don't, no idea why." Well, he just vanished halfway through an issue. We need the rest of the issue. He's just gone, and we have money for him for work he's done that we don't know how to get them the money. And then we've been approached by Image, by IDW, to do a what they call artist edition. What's the educational bunch? Scholastic. All these different people to collect, to do more chance and to collect Leave It to Chance. And he just doesn't respond. I don't know what to say. And you know, and we co-own the book, so I can't do anything without him. And it's especially frustrating because the plan originally, if you're following the book, and if you weren't aware of the 13, we were 2 issues away from being completely done with that storyline. And then what we were going to do after that, just so Paul could do it and also do other projects, was every year we would do one Tintin volume, like a nice hardcover, and by now we'd have like 20 of these things that kids could have been reading and whatever. And because he just sort of vanished on the thing, none of it will ever happen, and it's very, very, very sad for me. And a little irksome is that he posts bits of artwork on Twitter, and he's more than once posted layouts, because he laid out 14 and 15. He's posting layouts for the issues that he couldn't be bothered to actually draw. That is almost like a middle finger to me. So it's just a sad thing. So yeah, I got 13 issues out of him, and obviously 4 issues of the Golden Age. But he's a guy that just takes off and you don't see him again. So it's a bit of, even when I look at Chance now, Leave It Chance now, and people the amount of like guys who are like, oh, I was reading it when I was younger and now my daughter's reading it and everything else. It hurts me a little bit, my heart, to think, oh, we could have so much more for these guys to be enjoying. So anyway, there you go.
Speaking of heartbreaking experiences, too, you got to work with Barry Windsor Smith on Wildstorm Rising. Yes. That was somewhat of a difficult experience as well?
It wasn't easy, and he actually... do you know what irked me more than that? He was interviewed by Gary Groth. Yes. Who, can I be crude on this thing?
Oh, absolutely.
So basically, this interview by Gary Groth... Gary Groth is basically sucking the dick of Barry Windsor Smith and begging for more. And somehow or other, I guess I was vocal about how disappointed I was with the way Barry Smith like treated the script and the book and everything. And he brought it up to Barry Windsor Smith, and they both kind of like had a little joke. Who cares? It's just the writer. Blah blah blah. The fact is, though, that what was frustrating is he came on board because Jim Lee's a huge fan, as you know, and we all are. That was why it was so disappointing. He's a huge fan. And Barry Smith clearly did not give a fuck. So he was just doing work for money. And it doesn't. And if you undertake any job for money, you should do the best work you can. That's just how it should be. So in the middle of the book, he just decides, I'm bored. I'm going to make Void a giant. And he drew the pages. It wasn't like there was layouts or he asked first or anything. So he kind of stuck me with these plot points, and it literally would be like if. Just out of nowhere, I was doing Fantastic Four, and I was like, oh, you know what? Ben Grimm would be so much more interesting with butterfly wings or something, you know? So, in fact, he would be, wouldn't he? That's a good idea. But, so that was, it was just, and the way he did it, and the way that he just didn't give a fuck and everything else. I mean, he's a huge talented man, but he's always been very egotistical, and I don't think he's the nicest guy to hang out with. So it didn't sort of surprise me. I just wished I could have gotten one issue working with the guy where at the end of it I had this happy experience to look back on.
Well, you got a dozen other guys following up on that too, and that kind of burns them as well. So.
Yeah.
I'm Mr. Fix-It. This is my consigliere, Diablo Frank.
The line is Cagliostro.
Same difference. Spawn is one of the most successful comics properties of all time, with best-selling books, animated series, toy lines.
That stinky movie, all the lawsuits over who's got what rights.
Don't be a comedian. We got business to handle. We're here to pimp our new show, Spawn Talk. about Todd McFarlane's cursed anti-hero and his fight against all the forces of heaven and hell in a doomed quest to be reunited with his beloved wife, Wanda.
No, the show's called Spawnometer, named after the countdown clock on Al Simmons' Hellspawn supernatural power and undead lifespan.
Yeah, whatever. And the gimmick is we cover one issue of the comic per episode in 22 minutes or less. 1 minute for each page the comic runs.
Then we'll briefly look at another Image Comics creator or series in roughly chronological order, reflecting a quarter century of creators' rights opportunities at the greatest publisher in the industry.
Then we'll dump a letter section and some ads on the back of the show, just like Image Comics does. New shows will appear on Road Spine podcast feed through iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Shot Engine, and the Internet Archives.
Until we immediately start blowing our deadlines, just like an Image Comic.
Shut up! Why you gotta be a wise guy? This is why you got no friends.
Your run on Justice League of America was clearly concerned about legacy. Heroes like Dick Grayson, Donna Troy, and so on. Was that part of your pitch, or did DC come at you with that angle?
Well, what it was they were... So I asked me to the Justice League, and I came up with the team, and then almost immediately, as they were putting other books together and changing things, after the characters on the team, they're like, oh, you can't have that guy, you can't have that guy, you know, and suddenly I was losing all these characters, and it just became a mess. I mean, those first few issues are a real mess. I'm not proud of those at all. And I actually did 6 pages that was a much better transition from the old team that had been in it than the issue prior in this. And they said, no, start afresh. And I was like, oh, okay. So then I went out for a drink with Jeff Johns, and we discussed the idea of maybe doing this like the second tier. And it fell into place very well. I loved writing Dick Grayson Batman. I loved the fact that I got to do this sort of version of Donna Troy that was going through shock and trauma because she just lost her child all over again because of Darkest Night. And adding in a couple of oddballs like, Congrilla and McHale was kind of the substitute for John Jones. But my only regret is because they were concentrating so heavily on Barry Allen at the time, who they not long before had reintroduced or resurrected. What might have made that book just a little bit better with the fans was if I'd got to use Wally West, but instead I had Jesse Quick, and I got to like using Jesse Quick, and I liked the way I ended the book. I mean, the fact is they were doing New 52, so by the end of it I could do whatever I liked. So that final issue where she's pregnant and everything else, it was all I really very much enjoyed doing it. Some people liked it. I mean, they did, but those fans that wanted the originals, it was almost like a thumb in their eye that this team that had been the Titans was suddenly the Justice League. So wasn't for everybody, but once I found my groove, I very much enjoyed it, and I enjoyed doing that whole Earth 1, or not Earth 1, Earth 2, I'm showing my age there, the Justice League, Justice Society crossover, which I enjoyed very much.
Did you enjoy writing Supergirl in the new Krypton arc, and how much did that arc affect your writing of her in JLA?
Honestly, I don't feel that I wrote much in the way of... I wrote a very normal Supergirl in the little that I had... I mean, with all that Superman stuff, a lot of it was much more segregated than people realize. Like Greg Rucka asked, can I have Lois Lane to be one of my characters in Action Comics? I was like, sure. So, like, if you notice in Superman, there's very little or no Lois Lane at all, but I did more with Jimmy Olsen. So where there was some crossover, yes, I used Supergirl, but I don't feel I really added very much. I feel like I had more fun with her in even though it's almost a dirty word, but Cry for Justice. And then ultimately, because there I made a point of you think she's this young naive girl, and at the end of it you realize, oh no, she's known what's going on the whole time. She's just been working things out. So that was where I think I did a better job. And then when I was doing Supergirl in Justice League, I tried to make her fun. I tried to make her own personality, somebody different from. She wasn't just a female Superman. I don't know how good a job I did, but I certainly enjoyed it. As regards when I wrote her in the World of Krypton stuff, I'm not sure that I really did that much that was so groundbreaking.
In defense of Cry for Justice, it was a beautiful book, and I was enjoying it probably up until the stuff with Speedy and his daughter. But before that, I thought it was a pretty damn good book, and I think it may have survived the fans a little bit better without that one last part.
Yeah, I agree. I think had we just taken off Arsenal's arm, that would have been enough, and that served a purpose too, because the only thing I didn't like about Brad Metzer's Justice League was him saying, well, one day Arsenal's going to be better than you, with a bow and arrow, and I'm like, well, that should never be the case, you know. So we wanted it to be that the one thing he couldn't do was like pull back a bow, and I think that it actually worked. And the other thing I liked, and I remember in this because I made a connection, and I stopped at maybe Fort Worth here at one of the airports, and the amount of servicemen and women you see with prosthetics, like a lot, because they're all getting their connections to their bases or going home or what have you. So the idea of like I was like, you know what, having a superhero with a prosthetic and he, you know, uses it well, and it doesn't in any way inhibit who he is. I think that's a strong positive message. So I thought we were actually doing something good in regards to that.
And related to your work on Cable, and I especially like the Silver Age elements you brought to Cable during your run on that character.
Well, you're jumping around a little bit, but yes, I definitely wanted the thing about that book, and now it's all been happening, and it's just the state of everything. But at the time, if you remember, there was almost like two worlds within Marvel's comics. There was the world of the Marvel heroes, and then there was the X-Books. And they literally, I mean, I know lots of fans only bought the X-Books. They sort of existed in the same world, but apart from, you know, the Beast being in the Avengers, that was kind of it. And I thought, you know what, having Cable be this mutant that goes throughout the Marvel Universe, and like, that's why, you know, the Black Panther was in it, Union Jack. I was trying to make him into a Marvel character. And my goal, I mean, obviously, you know, Wolverine has been in the X-Men now. I mean, been in the Avengers now, and all of that. So it's less of a thing. And now Cable obviously has been in the Avengers with the Uncanny Avengers comic. But at the time, my goal was to get him to a point where he would be an Avenger at the end. And I didn't stay on the book as long as I should have. That was a mistake, leaving it that early. So I never got to see what might have happened if I had stayed on, but I very much enjoyed what I did at the time, and I loved working with Ladrone. He hasn't done that much working in American comics, so it was a real treat to do that.
Well, I just loved seeing that very 90s character taken back to like the Jack Kirby Marvel essence.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, that wasn't really me in terms of my intentions or anything. That was literally just that they got the drone to do the art, and he had this kind of Kirby art style. But it was a pretty nice thing, wasn't it? Yeah.
I jumped around a little bit on myself, too. You worked with Mark Bagley and Brett Booth on your JLA run. Did you cater your scripts at all to their individual styles, or were you just kind of doing your own thing and enjoying the work that came back to you?
No, I mean, I always try and cater my scripts to people's individual styles. I think that one of the things I noticed about Mark Bagley's work on Trinity was that he was given a lot of panels, and I was looking at his work on Ultimate Spider-Man, and this isn't a dig or anything. I just think like big, more sweeping panels suit his style. On top of which, you know, Justice League got 7 characters at the minimum. A lot of characters. It's hard to cram them all in and make it feel epic and big. So I tried to give him more sweeping images. With Brett Booth, the first thing I did with him was the Congrilla Starman single issue that kind of tied in with the final arc of Justice League, or the second to final arc. I didn't tailor his work so much. I very much enjoyed working with him. I wish he had stayed on and finished the art, because we're having a lot of fun together. But with Mark Bagley, I definitely tried to give him like big visuals and epic panels and double page spread panels and stuff like that. So that was me. Yes.
You brought in the dark Supergirl angle during your run. What was the genesis of that, and what are your general thoughts on the character of Supergirl?
Honestly, with the dark Supergirl stuff, I don't remember. The bottom line is, I don't remember what I was thinking at the time, why I did that. I just thought it would be shocking, and I don't know, honestly. And then my feelings about Supergirl are that my favourite Supergirls is where you still get that feeling of her innocence. I think I see it more in the TV show. Although, to be fair, I honestly haven't been reading the new Supergirl stuff, so I could be completely unfair. But I think when she becomes too adult or too worldly, I think that's a different character to me. That's Superwoman, really, a Superwoman character. I like the idea of someone with all this power who still has this wonder and looks at life with like fresh eyes. That's what I like.
How did you end up writing the back half of the Heroes Reborn Captain America run?
That was just, I love a challenge, and by this point, I had the creative respect of Jim Lee. I'd done quite a lot for him, and he liked my work. And without being especially mean in terms of how those Image Marvel books were looked at, the one that had the biggest negative response was Captain America. And so they couldn't take it. Jeff Loeb and Liefeld quit. And he's like, hey, we've got a commitment for another 6 issues. Can you do something with these? And the first thing they said, but can you please put the A back on his forehead? That was Jim Lee. Take off those stupid wings. And it was just a fun challenge to do a story. I mean, the funny thing about that story is, apart from the female Bucky, it could almost fit into the non-Image Captain America universe. So it was just a fun thing. With Joe Bennett, I think, was the artist. He was a good artist. It's not work I am like, oh my god, this is the best thing I've ever done. But it's certainly not something I'm ashamed of or embarrassed by.
So your main arc in that story was white supremacists on the rise, having infiltrated the highest levels of government, in particular having basically the run of S.H.I.E.L.D. Does it break your heart a little bit that story is more relevant in 2017 than in 1997?
Well, I think there's a lot. Without wishing to get into politics, the fact that at the moment our current president got elected, people decided it was fine to yell racist terms at strangers and turn say that hate, that blanket hatred was somehow a good thing or even a patriotic thing. I think that's very heartbreaking. So absolutely, the fact that the Sons of the Serpent then seemed more like science fiction, and now it's something that we have to keep our eyes doesn't become a fact is absolutely heartbreaking.
What are your general thoughts on Captain America, and do you think you'd ever return to that character?
I'm not sure. I don't know if I'd return to him. I do love him, though. I've always loved Captain America. He was the first Marvel character I ever wrote in a painted graphic novel I did. I forget what it was called, but it was Captain America Tales of Suspense, which was Captain America and Iron Man. I like his... I mean, obviously I've read them and they're good comics, but I'm not a fan of the Ultimate Captain America. I like him to have, honor and actually stand for what he's meant to stand for, hope and the ideal of America. But as long as I mean, never say never, we'll see. But if I wrote him, he would be a very sterling paragon, more so than a flawed modern day interpretation.
Not a character you're really associated with, but is the 75th anniversary of Wonder Woman, and I wondered if you had any general thoughts about her.
I love Wonder Woman, and I think I do a very good job writing her. That's it.
Finally, I think personally, of all the things of yours that I've read, Airboy is my favorite book that you've done. I really enjoyed it, but you also express a lot of frustration and regret in that book. And I'm wondering, where do you want to see your career in the coming years? In the coming years, I think I should concentrate on doing more screenplays. I should probably write another movie to direct and actually work hard at getting it made, which I haven't done. And I hope, I've always felt, and even then I feel like I'm patting myself on the back, but in terms of my who I am in comics, I'm more of a Tom Waits type writer than I am a Paul McCartney or, someone else that everyone loves and is well known. I'm more of a kind of a cliquey writer there are people that love me, but some people have never even heard of me. So I think I'd like to just do more stuff. I have some Image books that will be announced next year and some other stuff coming up. I'd just like to be more roundly well known. I'm one of the older guys now, which is weird to hear me say, and certainly I don't like hearing it, but I still have some fire in the hold, and I think I have more to contribute. So I just want to keep working and not being one of those guys that just comes to comics with, and you get that sense they're tired and they're just doing it for a paycheck. I never want to be that. I always want to keep swinging for the fences and trying new things. I mean, even Airboy, the decision with Airboy was to be as honest as obviously there's some fantasy and there's some extrapolation of things that are a little bit larger than they were, but a lot of those things, it's all real. The whole thing accidentally snorting heroin, that happened to me. That wasn't something I made up. And doing more stuff that you wouldn't expect, like Airboy as well, but also the stuff continuing to work in the mainstream and feel that I'm actually contributing and I'm not just turning the wheels, these creaky old rusty wheels for a paycheck. By the way, are you at liberty to mention any of those collaborators on the Image books?
Yeah, I'm a little bit shy of that, yeah.
Understand. I'm really looking forward to that, especially as awesome as Airboy was. I highly recommend everybody read Airboy, as long as they're okay with adult material. It's very adult, but it's a fantastic read.
I will tell you this, though, about the books. I've thought about this, and there is so much... And believe me, I'm a very, liberal guy, but there is so much sex and violence in comics now. What I will be doing with these books is doing them all ages, and by that I don't mean all ages like Lumberjanes or something designed for younger readers, but like how Raiders of the Lost Ark could be watched by an 8-year-old or an 8-year-old, or Casablanca, or a classic movie from the 60s or 70s, where because of censorship then and the Hays Code in films and whatnot, you had to be inventive to show, violence, or you had to be inventive to show romance or sex. So I'm gonna. These books will be like that. They'll be books that anybody can read, just so I can, A, it will hopefully increase the readership, but B, I think, it's the right thing to do.
First, there are things that you must know about me. I have 2 different identities.
You're not just Wonder Woman?
No, I'm also Diana Prince, United States Navy. It's a very necessary part of my plan. It allows me to be military intelligence, where I can know immediately where I'm most needed.
The Diana Prince Wonder Woman podcast, available on iTunes, Shout Engine, and the Internet Archive. Thanks for the social media support from 100 Issues, Abdu, Ali Batts, Badat Shapirak, Bill Bear, Carlos Castillo, Chris Sheehan, Coffee and Comics Podcast, Columbus Comics Corner, Comic Reflections, DCU Movie Page, Dr. G Nerdologist, Dwight L. McPherson, FKA Jason, Gautam Shaoran, Grant Richter, James DeMatteis, Jeffrey Brown, Joe Crawford, Keith G. Baker, King Size Comics Giant Size Fun Podcast, Luke Dobb, Odell Abner Dracula, Professor Frenzy, Randy Caldwell, Scott Rowland, and Trekker Talk. Siskoid wrote that Shag stole some of your JM Thunder on Bwahaha, the JLI podcast, but I could probably listen to him talk comics all day. And when questioned whether or not he'd heard the interview already, Odell Abner Dracula wrote, "This one I didn't miss. It was a good one." Thank you very much. Wonderful interview. Great talking with you.
Was that all the questions?
That's everything, yeah.
Okay. But was that enough?
No, it was wonderful. In fact, I went a little bit over the estimates, but you went on such interesting tangents. I decided to try to jump on that as much as I could.
To talk. I just want to make sure you're happy.
No, I'm very happy. Thank you very much again.
Thank
Wonderful
you.
to talk with you. Wonderful work, and especially I look forward, whether it's all ages or mature like this,
Well,